Hi, this is Joey Albert, and you're watching PhilippineNews.com.
So good afternoon. Glad that you are able to join us. I just want to clarify that I'm a pastor. I'm not a politician. I'm here to present an angle that you may not normally hear on this matter. And I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but I'm going to speak from a perspective to address this matter from a spiritual standpoint. And so I want to ask the question, why would God be opposed to a casino in Milpitas? And simply stated, Jesus came to proclaim good news to the poor. Casinos are bad news for the poor. And here's just a few reasons why. Gambling promotes the exploitation of others, especially the poor. For everyone who wins something at gambling, there are thousands of losers. People who have been duped by the seductive marketing appeal of gambling and promoted to throw away large sums of money. Gambling promotes poor management of God's resources. The worst possible use of God's resources is to throw them away at the altar of a God called chance or luck. Moreover, to line the pockets of the casino owners. And nothing that we have, we must remember, truly belongs to us. It belongs to God. Therefore, we all must use it wisely. Gambling also erodes what is traditionally in our country been recognized as the Judeo-Christian biblical work ethic. We're to earn our wages by creativity and the sweat of our brows. That is what Silicon Valley is all about, not by games of chance. And the addictive wagering process saps the good that a decent salary can afford and offers false hope. False hope that particularly exploits the undereducated and the poor. Gambling is driven also by greed. Gambling and its accompanying greed violates the 10th commandment not to covet the things that we don't have. Gambling makes us want more and more, promoting the lie that somehow wealth will ultimately make us happy. It's worth noting that all major Christian Protestant denominations have a recorded stance against legalized gambling. And although there's been a growing acceptance of legalized gambling in our country through lotteries and now casinos, which are popping up all over, every major Protestant denomination, the Presbyterians, the Methodists, the Episcopalians, the Baptists, the Lutherans, the Pentecostals, all have written stances opposing legalized gambling based on sound biblical and spiritual reasoning. And let me note that while the Catholic Church does not outright condemn recreational gambling, it expresses serious concerns about the legalized gambling and its associated evils. All of this to say, nothing at all then about the associated evils with gambling that come with gambling. Broken families, increased crime, and gambling's challenges to family values. And so I want to just make clear, as a pastor, I'm deeply concerned about our community. I love Milpitas. And I want to make sure that our schools are fully funded, and our fire departments, and our police departments, but let me just ask a question. Would God really have us fund these critical civil services through a gambling-based economy that exploits the poor? Not the God of the Bible. Is there really any question that the primary motivation of the casinos is profit and not charity? So again, I'll say what I started with. Why is God opposed to a casino in Milpitas? Simply stated, Jesus came to proclaim good news to the poor. Casinos are bad news for the poor.
I am Hong Pham. I'm the senior pastor at Grace Alliance Church, a Vietnamese church in Milpitas. Like Pastor Mark, I am not a politician. But I personally oppose Measure E for the following reasons. The Holy Scripture teaches us that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And some people craving money have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows. Now, Scripture does not say that money itself is evil, but the craving of money, that is the root of all evil. And I believe that the expansion of the casino in Milpitas will feed to the craving of money and pierce the innocent with more and more sorrows. Measure E is not just about moving an existing casino into a nearby city. Measure E is about expansion, adding the number of card tables, enticing more citizens to crave for money, and get them into more troubles. As a Vietnamese pastor, I have seen gambling. The gambling addiction damaged the Vietnamese American families. When I began my pastorate 20 years ago, a young man knocked on my door late at night, asking, begging for a quick loan, he says, to help pay off his gambling debt, to get him out of trouble, and to save his marriage. Well, it was painful for me to find out later that it did not get him out of trouble, and it did not save his marriage. Since then, I have learned that this young man wasn't an isolated case. It is a known fact that the gambling rates are higher among Asians than any other ethnicity in the United States. Dr. Tim Fong is a co-director of UCLA Gambling Studies Program, has some disturbing statistics about Asian gamblers, and he warns us about the severe consequences: permanent damage to the families, divorce, abuse, financial devastations, and generational debts. Alan An, the executive director of Korean Community Services in Buena Park, claims that gambling is a much bigger issue than drugs abuse when it comes to destroying families and disrupting lives. Money Magazine just recently listed Milpitas as the 29th best little city to live in the country. Milpitas is a blessed place. It is so because it is strong in family value, rich in culture, and diverse in ethnicity. And we need to protect our blessings. 60% of Milpitas residents have Asian background. And when we know that Asians are among the most vulnerable when it comes to gambling, we need to think twice about expanding the casino operations into this special little city. Like Pastor Mark, I care deeply about the city. I care about Milpitas. I care about the well-being of the residents. I care about the Asian and the Vietnamese communities that I serve. And for that, I strongly oppose Measure E.
All right. We've been in Milpitas for about 20 years, and we were very surprised when we heard about a casino having plans to move to Milpitas. And we are speaking to our congregants, and we are strongly advocating against Measure E. The world religions differ on many points, but one belief in common is that gambling is a serious vice that contributes greatly to the breakdown of the individual, the family, and the community. Islam strictly prohibits gambling because of the risks far outweigh the benefits. I personally am strongly opposed to gambling because of its addictive nature. Gambling is addictive, it's destructive, and it's a black hole of economic productivity. By and large, gambling is a losing proposition. The great majority of those who gamble, they become losers. They lose their hard-earned wealth. Governments may be attracted to the jobs and tax revenue of casinos. So, in this case, the city of Milpitas may be attracted by the prospect of the casino creating jobs and bringing in tax revenues. However, restaurants and entertainment venues will lose patrons, personal bankruptcies and home foreclosures will jump, and the costs for police and related services will soar. So this is going to have a net negative impact on the tax revenue for Milpitas, a net negative on its costs, so their expenses are going to increase. The net effect will be an increase in expenditure for the city of Milpitas, which will result perhaps in increased taxation or debt. So, Zaki?
Hello. Today is my personal story about gambling. My father's gambling addiction. How about his compulsive gambling affected our family, friends, and the community. This is not fiction, not a fairy tale, because there is no happy ending. You may have heard the saying, the house always wins. Yeah, the house always wins, but not my house. We were the losers. My dad, as far as I know, always gambled. I grew up in San Francisco in the 60s, and as a child, I knew he was gone from the morning until late evening, missing meals because the excuse was he's working. But as I grew up, I also heard about the big wins, especially when he described his experiences when he played poker or blackjack. He believed the big win was just around the corner and played for hours several times a week. I finally figured out that he was in some dark alley, back room, playing at poker tables in Chinatown, where secret betting and unsanctioned gambling occurred. Most of his time during the week was spent on gambling. That meant time away from us. I felt cheated as a kid. My father seemed so preoccupied with improving his odds at blackjack, poker, or playing slots, he often talked about how he could get the next big win, that he ignored his wife, his kids, and paying household bills. I could hear my mom and dad arguing about money in our tiny flat where we lived in Chinatown. The walls were so thin, you could hear everything. It would scare me as a child to hear threats, raised voices, and yelling. So as I grew up over time, making excuses, lies, and stories to save the family from embarrassment was what we had to do. Saving the family face. Maintaining our family image was very important. I learned not to say anything as I grew older, so friends and relatives wouldn't know the truth, and I wouldn't feel so ashamed about lying and making up excuses. Life was never about us as a family unit, but everything centered around my father's compulsive gambling habit. So much so, even our family vacations centered around on going to Las Vegas, Reno, and the Lake Tahoe state line. I remember walking through the casinos as a child to the on-site daycare at Circus. I would be dropped off along with my sister, and we were given a few bucks to keep us self-occupied while Dad gambled on the slots, played roulette, and tried his hand at the poker tables. I also remembered other arguments where Mom would try to interfere with his binges and try to take some of the winnings before he lost all of it back during his winning streak. She made sure to keep an eye on him while we were in the casino's daycare, so he wouldn't blow it all at one time. But as time moved along, we also grew up and moved to the suburbs in the 70s. And as gambling addiction became the big elephant in the room, our family learned to look the other way and continue with the lies about having to work to make extra money. Soon we became to believe that it must be true, since he was at work more than he was at home. But in reality, I know not to expect him home for dinner, not to ask for an allowance, and never talk to him about money. I knew from my youth that you couldn't count on Dad for anything. Pretty much, my mom worked and paid all the bills and made sure we had food on the table. She covered for his gambling addiction, and he depended on her to make sure she had the responsibilities to pay for all the bills, buy all the groceries, and work a full time to support us. My father did carry his share of the household responsibilities. He was not a part of my life. When you are a compulsive gambler, your world is all about you, your habit, your selfish needs, and your desires. A gambler like my father is a self-absorbed individual. His world centers around the next big win, lies about how much money he won and lost, and gambles until he loses all his money and unable to control his life. So you might ask, how is my father today? Well, he's alive. Today my father is on Medi-Cal and Medicaid. He relies on government assistance and family members for financial help. He has gone into credit card debt, has been to court for that, and reverse mortgaged his home. So you might have asked, why didn't he change? No one can make a compulsive gambler change unless they are willing to seek help and have a desire to want to stop. It's hard to change once you make a lifetime commitment to gamble. That's the biggest consequence that no one tells you. You throw away your life, thinking that one day you're going to make it big. Make it big. So the real question is, why have a casino in Milpitas? What is Milpitas willing to risk? By bringing the casino to Milpitas, it will change the heart and values we enjoy today. And the casino will certainly have a negative impact on the community and the financial future for our children. I know for certain that gambling left a negative image in my life. That financial destruction in my family is real. I wouldn't want that for any family, or risk that type of life for any child. Thank you.
The law that has to be passed is enabling legislation at the state. There was a particular assembly bill that was introduced this current legislative period, and it did not make it out of the committees in the Senate, and will be more than likely reintroduced this coming year if Measure E passes. If Measure E fails, there will be no legislation introduced at the state legislative level.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Mike.
Good afternoon. Based on a 2006 state study and a 2010 census, Milpitas has roughly 1,900 problem gamblers and approximately 3,400 at-risk adults. According to the California Office of Problem Gambling, each problem gambler has a negative effect on about 7 other people. These negative impacts cluster into 3 broad categories. Financial devastation comes from maxed out credit cards, the loss of a home, and loss of savings. Domestic violence, neglect of children, and senior abuse can lead to broken relationships. Employment becomes at risk due to frequent tardiness or unpaid loans from a boss and or coworkers. Loss of employment from theft or embezzlement of employer funds may lead to arrest, conviction, and ultimately jail time. The California Office of Problem Gambling also cites studies that show children of problem gamblers suffer adversely compared to their peers. They attempt suicide twice as often as their classmates. They have poor school and work performance than children of non-problem gamblers. They are also more likely to use tobacco, alcohol, and illegal drugs than their classmates. I am sure that moving a card room to Milpitas and increasing the number of tables from 49 to 115 means more trouble for the 5,300 individuals who are either problem gamblers or at risk of becoming a problem gambler in Milpitas. A card room that is close to home is more a threat than the nearest Indian casino in San Pablo. Ultimately, with respect to Measure E, Milpitas voters are the key to the character of the city, our collective quality of life, and maintaining the reputation we enjoy as a family-friendly town. Measure E poses the question for all Milpitas voters: are dollars more important than our city's character? My answer is an emphatic no, and I urge Milpitas voters to vote a resounding no on Measure E. Thank you.